because the girlies loved not the new Call of Duty, whichever one had Ghost in it. I don't do anything with Call of Duty. I don't give a shit.
Yeah, me neither.
Yeah,
Yeah, me
apparently it was
neither.
like the baby girlification of all of those characters, and that's why the next Call of Duty went so like aggressive
The
with
baby
like their branding.
girlification.
Yeah, I learned
I smell
so
a
much.
like 3-hour video essay about that singular topic.
So this week I finished Project Wingman. Everybody else finished it way before me, but like
I didn't finish it way before you. I dragged myself through that game, to be honest.
I mean, I was trying, but then I ended up in the wonderful state of Florida. If you've ever been there, it's so magical.
What level was that?
People can we piss off?
What level was Florida?
Yeah.
I
Was
don't
that
know.
before or after the nuclear winter?
Let's call it level 13.
Okay.
I think it's after the first one, but before the second one.
All right, cool. Thanks. See, we're an informative podcast. We don't just talk opinions here. We give you the cold, hard facts.
So I kind of wanted to play this game because my brother had kept yelling at me because he was in a mood where he was playing like Ace Combat a lot, but they had like an indie game called Project Wingman that came out, which is similar to Ace Combat, but I think it's just on a shorter scale. I might honestly be wrong about that. I think that typically the Ace Combat games are around the same amount of time that this took, but I think this one was like impressive for a couple main reasons. I think there was only like actually like 3 developers on this game entirely, and then a composer, which is nuts. So like I'm looking it up. It was like Abi Rahmani, Nicholas Chalkley, and the artist was Abi Rahmani. Writers was Matt Nguyen, and then the composer was Jose Pavli. And honestly, like I just think that in terms of like an indie game, this is probably like as indie as you can get with like only 4 people working on it, and the actual quality that you got out of the game was pretty impressive compared to some of the other stuff like that's been made. But again, you know, time and resources can really do a lot to improve the way that your game looks. Not everything is going to be like this. Like if you're talking about something that's made in a game jam, it's not going to look like this off the rip. But it was really impressive. And so I wanted to take a look at it for a while. So I decided to put it on the like the actual wheel that we were doing. And we talked about a couple things. Some of the important things that came to mind that when we were like budgeting out for this game, like is if we were going to do like all out for it. So budget was kind of important. The game is like $20, which isn't too bad. But like if you wanted to play with like a flight stick, you could. That was an option. But most people just recommend to use like the average like Xbox controller. I fucked up and I bought the stick. Side note on the whole thing, which is even funnier, was that I bought a WinWing. I think it's a Win. It says it on the thing. Ursa Minor WinWing flight stick. And it was pretty funny because when I bought it, some wacky things are going on in the United States where we're getting tariffed to hell and back on like shipping. So I wasn't gonna buy it because they didn't actually have any like of those Ursa miners in the United States. It was all in China. So I would have had to pay like a ridiculous amount of shipping. But then like randomly one day they were like, oh, actually, we have a whole bunch of them in this facility in the United States. So I was like, and I like filled out all my information, and then I got the stick in like 3 or 4 days, which was crazy too, because I thought it was gonna be like 2 or 3 months out, and I thought we were gonna have to push back this podcast. All this to say, I went a stupid amount of extra effort for this podcast. And I don't know if it's necessarily worth it, but it was definitely fun. But yeah, talking about Project Wingman 2, this game is like taking place on an alternate Earth. Some of the stuff, like, it's kind of weird location wise where things are happening, because essentially I believe it was like Yellowstone National Park like explodes and causes like the earth to kind of like shift into these separate places. So you are basically a group of mercenaries. You follow this group called Sicario, and they are essentially mercenaries hired by the country of Cascadia to protect against this like overarching, I guess I would call it like an empire of the what's called the Federation, the United Federation. And
The
essentially
Pacific
like
Federation.
Pacific Federation, correct? Yeah. So it's a pretty straightforward game story wise, where like at working for Sicario, you kind of start fighting back the Federation, but the game like sprinkles in nice little twists here and there to kind of make that conflict way more interesting. But essentially, all it comes down to is that you are trying to put an end to the Federation, create a ceasefire, and end the war by being involved as kind of these outsiders to the main conflict. And you are doing this solely for the money. Like this is all for the big buckaroos, whereas other people take this a little bit like way more seriously, going into boss fights later with stuff like Frost and Crimson One, who did not just nuke his own country once but twice. But yeah, I'll let you guys take the floor from there, talking about the setting, the plot, and we can get back into my thoughts.
Cool. One thing I thought of when you were talking was like when you were explaining how this was such a like a small team that made this game, and it reminded me that they do have like a note once you complete the campaign that's basically like, we know this game isn't perfect, it has its faults, like we hope players just enjoy it as much as, you know, as much or have as much fun with it as we had making it. So obviously it's a very passionate team. I definitely agree with your point about, for a team of that scale to be able to do, really to have like any functioning like final product to any extent is definitely an achievement in itself. And then in terms of plot, my perspective is that I did understand what was happening story-wise on like a very basic level of like, all right, we're fighting this other, you know, team, like we're this one side, and you know, things escalate from there. But I will say, like, an important note, if you're going into this, just be prepared in between levels for them to be like a lot of dialogue. So if that is something that, if you're a really big RPG person, and you really like lore and specifically like this kind of setting, then I think that'll be a very big plus for you. But it may be difficult to grasp, especially if you're not used to this kind of genre before, and that was kind of my experience. But I'll leave it there.
Yeah, so just a quick note too. The calls themselves kind of reminded me of the codec calls that you get in games like Metal Gear Solid. So it's just like long periods of like straight dialogue to give you a little bit about the backstory and the country. And it's actually kind of interesting too that the briefs also carry around important dialogue for each mission. Being a stupid, dumb, idiot baby, when they explained to me very clearly that this was a mission where you should not bring like air missiles and that you should bring just bombs to drop on top of buildings, I didn't listen while they were explaining this to me, and ended up just like failing that mission like 3 or 4 times off of sheer uh idiotness. I don't know, good word. But what's good to talk about is just like, again, it's a lot of just setting up for your mission and then getting you ready to fly in between. And then during all of this, there's one major cutscene essentially where after Crimson One drops like the first nuclear bomb, you get a cutscene where they're like, okay, Sicario does not want to be a part of this conflict anymore, and you basically just get like paid or roped back into the conflict to finish it off one last time to fight for Cascadia.
Yeah, I mean, so for me, I honestly, it didn't feel like a game that was made by a small team. You could really feel the love. I would have believed that it was made by like a mid-sized studio.
Agreed.
And in fact, playing it, I really did think that until I went and I did my research. I was like, oh shit, this is small. So I think that was awesome. I think they did a really, really incredible job in that regard. That being said, it's not for me. But I do again recognize it was very, very well made. Flight sims just aren't my thing. I did not feel that the really well developed lore was well integrated into the gameplay in a meaningful way. Which was one of my major concerns, where I was kind of playing the game, and we'll talk about it more when we get to gameplay. But I kept spacing. I was spacing a lot. And there was a lot of dialogue that was coming up. Even the cutscenes in between, I was and I'm someone who loves lore dumps. I really do, but I was just really, it wasn't connecting for me because it didn't feel attached to anything. So I was really struggling with that, and I had to replay submissions to like, okay, I'm gonna focus this time, and you enter the flow state, which is a good thing, but if you're too tranced out, you're not picking up on the like details of dialogue that's happening when it doesn't connect to what's on the screen. So that was just kind of an issue I had. Going back and then like reading through the lore and the plot and all of that, I was like, oh, that's really cool. That's neat.
Yep.
I want to see it integrated into the gameplay more than just, oh no, here comes Crimson One, and then the pips on the screen move on. And
yeah,
Crimson One showing up like 15 times to just fuck up your day is like the funniest thing to me. I think that like sometimes I just imagine I'm just gonna go to the bathroom and the pilot from Crimson One is gonna be there with like 17 rocket launchers just pointed at me, and he's like, "Avoid this bitch!" Like, just like
that's a good meme.
You kill the whole Crimson team except for him, and he's like, I have decided that you, Monarch, who is who you play as, the silent protagonist, you are the enemy. Fuck everybody else. It's you.
It's your fault.
And he does, in fairness, that does come across that this one person hates your ass so much.
Yeah.
That's fun.
Yeah.
Well,
I was just gonna say that I totally agree with that. Out of everything in the game, like that through line like registered the most for me. And I mean, definitely part of it's just that like they show up a few times, and to Emily's point, that because of that, because you at least have, it's like this at the beginning, the first time you fight them, it's like you are horribly outmatched, and then you know, you keep going and going, and then as you progress with the levels, now it's like, oh, okay, the tables are turned. Now I'm, you know, going after them, and they're trying to run away from me. So in terms of that, like that was designed well. But I do agree with Emily that I felt similarly. Like there was a lot of lore that was taking place, and I'm also someone that I like lore a lot. But if it's not implemented with the narrative design in a meaningful way, it just feels like someone's just I like they have their novella, their novel, their fan story, and it's just going and going and going, and it doesn't have really any, again, meaning to it, unfortunately. I also think so. I had similar experiences as well to what Nick was saying with like a lot of dialogue happening in those cutscenes, and then they just kind of sneak in as like, oh, by the way, you should really use an air. Like, they kind of just sneak it in there. So I was like, wait, okay, let me pay attention. But if that is like, if you see, have that happen to you, luckily in the game there is like, so there'll be two little like yellow bars, and it just says like amount of air troops
Yeah.
or amount of ground troops. So if you look off of that, you can get like a general sense of like what you should be bringing, and that did come across easier, I will say, as the game progressed, in terms of like knowing, okay, if it's a like super air kind of fight, then I should bring this craft with like this loadout. So that came across eventually. It did take quite a while, which we can get into, but I'll
Yeah.
leave it there for now.
So two things, just following up on that. I think that like there is a steep learning curve for this.
Yeah.
The thing about it though, coming at this from as an outsider, looking in, they kind of expect you to already be playing like the Ace Combat games. This isn't like a game that is designed for first timers to get in, even though I will say it is a game for first timers to like dip their toes into Ace Combat, because you don't have to have that same commitment to the series as like the long-standing Ace Combat franchise, but there is some expectation that you have played those games previously, and this is kind of like a side story for that. So in a weird way, yeah, it's a little bit of both. It's like, yeah, on one hand it's like, oh, okay, yeah, new story, great way to start, but then on the other hand it's like, oh, but they expect you to know how to do the gameplay at the very least, right? Like that's kind of the way it goes. But talking about the story, I think that there is something there with the story. I do really like the lore of the world. And I think that they do a pretty good job of like tying the lore of each of the characters into the larger set pieces. This game is constantly talking, and it can kind of feel like a blur when you're playing the game, because there's a lot of times where, I was joking about the pips with the missiles, but you're kind of paying attention to like the missiles, things firing at you, things shooting. And like if you're like really focused on avoiding or dodging things, while the narrative is continually going, you're not always going to be paying attention to it. And so it can lead to a lot of disconnect where you're like, oh, they mentioned or referenced something previously, but I didn't catch that line on my initial run through because it kind of went by while I was fighting somebody like very important. Um, so, for example, my brother had pointed out in the final fight that if you take like a co-pilot to the final boss level, you get a co-pilot. There's some planes that have like two pilots. Doesn't really change the gameplay at all. But your co-pilot's name is Prez. They're cute. They had a little dialogue and little sprinkles in there every now and then. But one of the things that happens is that she actually faints from how fast the plane is going, and like her head thuds into like the front of like her seat. And like my brother had mentioned that, but I just thought she like tapped out and she couldn't like participate. No, her body just goes and so that's kind of like the things that I mean. Like I didn't notice that off the initial encounter, just because like so much was happening on screen that it was kind of like a hard to focus on that. The other one that I can mention is with the diplomat. Not a lot of I'd say like character development, but a couple characters get a little more than others. The diplomat is like a good example of that. He has like a history of, I think he was he like a noble or something along those lines? I believe that was the case, right? Or
Think something.
he was like he's like a he's like was like an actual diplomat, or like dealt with like foreign policy, and that was like his job before becoming like a pilot. And essentially like you get that information in one of the levels where you're just kind of like stealth bombing um over, Federation lines. And the other time is like you get this big blowout where like again Crimson One comes in and he's like, "You fucked my mom." And this guy is like, "Dude, what the hell are you fucking talking about?" And you just like hear him like loudly and aggressively crashing out against this guy, because again, like he nuked his own country twice, essentially because he wants to make sure that Cascadia can never actually have any of that land. Which is fucking insane that they let him like pilot the thing again, and especially the big weapon, which is Say the name, guys. Say the name. Who wants to say it? Can we do it on the count of 3?
You could do it on the count of 3.
You can do it on the count of 3.
It's Project Wingman. It's the name of the game, guys. The Project Wingman is the final jet of the game, but it's just really funny because like they let the crazy guy who like nuked their own country twice pilot the death weapon at the very end.
Forgot about that.
That's like
Yeah.
straight out of Independence Day.
Yeah, it is. But yeah, Crimson One was an interesting one too. He was another character that got a lot of development because like you said, the first time you fight him, you're outmatched, but then later on he comes back with, you know, like his friends again and you kill all of them. And I think that kind of leads into things where it's like he was probably like this kind of normal individual, but because you killed people who were very close to him, I think it kind of tilts his perspective on the world in a very negative direction. And like if you think about it, like Monarch has that same crew. He has like Diplomat, Galaxy, and Comedian, I think it was, right? The third pilot.
Yeah, that sounds right.
And those are his crew. They don't end up dying, but like these were people that he was close to. So seeing like all of them die, like he has this idea that he needs to get this sense of revenge, and his character kind of builds off of again, like all these fucking plane games, they're all Gundam. Everything is Gundam. So like he's essentially like the Char Aznable, which is like this character who has this great sense of pettiness that he needs to be the best pilot ever and like does a lot of shitty things, but it's your fault that he's doing them. Like that's the kind of ideology that he has, and it kind of plays off here too with Crimson One, which I think is very interesting. Like but for the rest of it, right? Like I don't think you get a lot from characters like Galaxy. I don't think you get a lot from Prez or anybody else. Like you get some from Frost, not really, because she's only like 2 levels or so. But yeah, that's kind of like my main issue. I feel like the story itself was interesting, but like you weren't really engaged with it because it was kind of hard to pay attention to. It's one of those things where I feel like I really need to go back and like read up on to like make sure that I'm completely getting all the facts right.
I want to go back a little bit to something that you guys had both actually mentioned in the like hinting of how to beat the levels in dialogue versus like the UI itself. Normally, I'm really into integrating like the we call this ludonarrative harmony, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you integrate what you have to do into the narrative. Ludonarrative dissonance, which is the term most people are very familiar with, is when what you have to do clashes with what you're told. The gameplay clashes with the narrative. I like it. I like both. Both ludonarrative dissonance is not inherently a bad thing. It can be used to really great effect for pulling people out of the story and everything. You know, it's not bad. But you know, it is nice when it matches up, which in this case it does. The problem is, again, with when you're sitting through a 3-minute cutscene that is just a picture of a map with someone talking to you.
Yeah.
I'm not tuned in. So I did wind up. It was really nice that in the top corner it said, you know, hey, this is how many air units, this is how many ground units. That was super helpful. But yeah, the learning curve, it very much expects you to have played similar games before. In some ways. In other ways, it's like a very friendly entry.
Yeah.
But in the sense of like, you're just kind of thrown into the game. It is very much a learn by doing, which, as I've said, it is my preference. This was definitely something that at first I was like, this fucking sucks. I don't know how to do the controls. I do have a complaint about the page for binding your controls.
Oh god.
me.
Oh fucking god, bro. I felt like I was like I had to like translate something that I could not understand onto a controller. It was terrible.
Yeah, so you know what? So I don't know if you guys had this problem. I attempted to use a controller. Ignore my janky ass cord. I
Yeah.
did try to use a controller, which is something that I really am not great with. It was incredibly difficult for me for a number of reasons. So I'm like, all right, maybe not. So keyboard and mouse. First problem I had was it doesn't tell you what the controls are. Like the tutorial is just kind of fly, shoot, land. It's like, okay, what buttons do I hit? All right, well, I'll just check the bindings. The bindings for your basic movement it didn't say like yaw, right? YAW, that's the best I can do with that word, yaw. It didn't say what that was bound to. So naturally, what's your instinct?
I don't know.
Hit buttons and see what happens because it did have a little thing that would like move when
Yeah,
you
that would tell
triggered.
you.
Yeah. The problem is that was also bound to open and close the menu.
Yep, that's what happened to me.
So I'm trying to figure out how to go up, down, side to side, roll, don't roll, move in fucking 8 directions. And meanwhile, every time I try to do something, the menu is changing. And I have to
Yep.
be so quick with looking to see if before the menu changes, did the little directional arrow move? Guys, fix that shit.
No. Yeah, I was gonna say though, the funny thing is that I was reading online that this is apparently a fucking rite of passage for these types of games. It's like
Why?
like it is just like the key binding nightmare is like you have to just figure it the fuck out. My brother was like, I was like, I was asking him, I was like, hey, do you know how to bind this thing? And he's like, oh, you're doing that part of setup, yeah. And it took me a solid fucking day to just figure out how to do it. And then like the problem
Man.
is this fucking thing has like a million buttons. Like which one
Yeah.
the fuck am I supposed to bind to? Like I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. So that was definitely like that was a complaint that I had. But you know, to kind of get back into the controller situation if I can, this too difficult for
Yeah.
again, accessibility reasons for me. And also just I don't use a controller. I have this for game development reasons and because I think everyone who plays games should have a usable controller. So I have that but it was very difficult to like it was so sensitive and I was playing with sensitivity and it was still okay.
Yeah.
So I'm using keyboard and mouse. It went from being really, really difficult to way too fucking easy, where it became a point and click game,
Yeah. Yeah.
and there was no in between. And that was one of the reasons why. So I'm gonna go back to flow state. I'm gonna go back to my good boy Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, who is he passed away a couple of years ago. Was a Hungarian psychologist who came up with this idea of flow state. And the idea is essentially that when you are creating a task for someone, you want it to be like the perfect balance between increasingly difficult like as people's skill gets better, the thing should get harder. And you want them to stay in that they're getting better, the skill is getting harder. There's like a proportional move up that there should be. That gets people engaged and in the zone. That's where that comes from. That's just flow state. This it was too easy, so I was fluctuating between bored and spaced out, and I had like a video on, and I was normally I stream the games that I play so that I can have them not as for streaming purposes, but so I can have a recorded thing because it's very difficult to study games, which is kind of what I do when you can't reference them like you can a book or a movie. So having a recording is really helpful. Playing it by itself, and I do silent streams for the most part when I'm doing this. Playing this in silence, I was losing it. I had to have something on a second screen because I was just not I couldn't pay attention. I just genuinely couldn't. So, I don't know what my point is. Fix the controllers situation, the bindings, I guess, or don't fix the bindings. Fix the ability to look at the bindings. That should be the bare minimum. And also, yeah, keyboard and mouse was very easy, but it kind of turned it into a point and click arcade game. Um, which was a little disappointing.
Yeah, so I agree, going back to the point about like there are certain choices with the game design that are like, okay, you better have played another kind of flight sim before, otherwise you're kind of bone buddy. And then there's other things that are very forgiving and like, okay, this maybe is your first flight sim game. Like I think the biggest one that comes to mind for me is that in terms of actually controlling the plane, they did have an option that was like easy flight mode. I don't know if that's exactly what it was called, but I flipped that on after like the first 10 minutes, and like I don't know if I would have been able to get through this without that, because trying to even like turn on the, default settings is like a whole thing in itself. Like maybe Nick could talk about how that was, cuz I think you played with the default settings, or maybe.
Yeah, I didn't toggle anything.
Okay. So that would be good to hear a perspective. Um in terms of, if maybe that controller was more apt for it. But for me,
Yeah,
like
I'll talk
I'm
about it.
I'm glad that I turned that on. It made, getting around a lot easier in levels. And then it is worth noting that me and Emily played on easy mode and Nick played on hard mode, and I'm sure he'll go into, more his personal experience on that. But for me, like I think the crux is that it's like I would have maybe gone to medium, but it's like I'm already having so many issues with just the whole checkpointing system, which maybe we can segue into afterwards. But I just saw it as that. It was like, okay, even if it is going to be this easy point and click, like I'm just trying to complete it. And if I make it easier, it's going to be easier to complete, even if it's not like super fulfilling. So I was looking at
I
more
would
as like not, there was a point where I stopped thinking about it as like having fun. That came in waves occasionally, but I just saw it as more as like, all right, this is a game. I have to finish it. And I
Yep, I
finish
had
it.
that very much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll leave it there.
uh so just going with like off what Matt says, and I actually agree with him on this. I think that this game really desperately needed like a checkpoint system. Um I had a very different experience where I it was not a point and click. It was fucking God was on my tail, and the Grim Reaper was coming for his scythe, and every fucking 5 minutes I saw a pip on that screen, and I was shooting flares like a motherfucker. So to get back to it though, I'll focus instead of making jokes. Uh I think that the problem that I had was with the checkpoints was that I kind of wish this game was a little bit more forgiving, because when you have levels that are that long, like 30, 40 minutes a piece, or 30 to 20, either which way, that are
Mm-hmm.
very long, it feels like needlessly punishing that if you crash the plane or if you get shot down, you essentially lose all of your progress for a level. I had a day where like I could not like beat a specific level on hard, and it took me a really long time, and it's kind of like what messed up us even recording this podcast. Like it almost like messed up the timing of it, just because it took me so long to complete a level, because essentially I was replaying the same level over and over again because of that. So I understand like why you would want to like put it on an easier difficulty, because it does feel needlessly punishing, where they could have, like, if you died, just like chopped off a portion of your money. Like you can't buy a cool new jet. Like that's really, I think, where that design probably should have landed, where the rewards themselves are less bountiful if you don't complete a level or if you get shot down. That way you're not losing progress, because I think it kind of hurts the momentum of the game,
Mm-hmm.
where like if you're enjoying a level, like you're really enjoying it and you're into it, but if you hate a level and you have to play it multiple times because you died, you might not want to continue engaging with the game at all. And I think that is a very valid criticism and critique of the game. But now is when we talk about difficulty. And again, difficulty is one of those things that is so hard to get like perfectly right, and even AAA developers struggle with it. Again, talking about like developers, we have like 3 people going into it. Again, there's going to be a couple hiccups and things. Um Talking about like binding, for example, some of the menus didn't even work occasionally. I would get out like white bars and spaces, which kind of made it difficult to bind the controllers from the get-go. And especially when that type of stuff is so important to like start playing the game, uh, it leads to a couple issues. But again, like I feel like this experience, I wish that there was like some sort of like complete guide, a complete way to like get into this genre of games. I really wish it was more plug and play. But it isn't. It's really specific because there are so many different types of controllers that you can buy for these types of games. So it's very hard to just make something for everything, like a complete like button mapping and everything. That's I kind of understand that, and like being a new developer too, like I don't think that you're gonna get it right all the time, but that's that. It's I wish it was better. I really do. And it took me a really long time to actually get it set up, but like eventually I figured it out. Then when we finally actually get into the game, I think difficulty is like a completely different issue. I think where Emily and Matt were playing this game on easy, it's definitely like the first 5 levels are boring as hell because it's like the tutorial to teach you like how to actually fly the plane, how to actually use the weapons. And on top of that too, the planes that you actually get introduced to don't have additional like weapon slots. So you're not playing at full capacity with all of the tools provided with you like later in the game. Eventually like I was riding with the FDS-14, I think was the name of the plane. By the way, Emily, that's the plane I was gonna tell you to get. Forgot to do that. Sorry, champ. That's the best one for 2 people. But going like completing missions with that was a lot of fun for me because you actually got a pretty decent variety. You pretty much had like long range missiles, multi-hit missiles, like backup long range missiles and air bombs, stuff like that. So it gave you a pretty nice and decent variety. But I think that like the difficulty is a tough thing because like as soon as you like hit level 5, I think the game actually does kind of kick into overdrive in terms of the actual difficulty. On easy, I could see that like not really happening and like it kind of becoming like a cookie clicker. But like on fucking hard, I was like actually dying. I showed Matt some of like the gameplay that like I was going through for some bosses, and it's probably going to be playing during this episode. But needless to say, like I had a very different experience
Mhm.
where I think the idea of this is that the easier difficulties kind of like get you into learning how to control the plane, getting you familiar with like dropping and using weapons. So like easy and normal feel like that's what they were trying to do. But I think the difficulty for this one is supposed to be like hard and mercenary. That's where I felt like the best experience kind of lied because I was always being challenged. There was always like something shooting me down environmentally, whether it be like the cannons themselves with the guns or the rail guns, which get really scary. I love side note, I love the effect on those things. There's so many like bright lights, and it makes again like this game's visuals look really stunning when you're flying. And the missiles too, going off of like old mecha anime, like the trails and like the missiles being in the air and like you can kind of see them like wrapping around. It makes some very compelling imagery. But I think that's why like I like encouraged you guys to keep going because at least at the very least I was having a very good time. But I think that like um the higher difficulties were designed better. That's where I felt like everything kind of clicked because I started playing the first time around on normal and I was really bored of it. But as soon as I turned it on to hard, I was like, okay, this is really fun. Like a lot of things are coming at me at once. There's a lot of stuff that I have to pay attention to, and the dogfighting can be pretty hard if you're not paying attention. But then again, like that's why I had to like struggle with actually paying attention to the narrative because like so much was coming at me at once where I was like, there's no way I'm gonna even listening to this, there's no way I'm gonna pay attention to this. Um but yeah, I hope that like during this too, I'll probably end up showing you later, Emily. But the actual like final boss was fucking insane. Like like the dude, like the Crimson One Project Wingman was a really tough fight. Like there was a lot like being shot at me at the same time. And eventually I think I got the hang of it, which was good. Especially because again, I'm using like a new controller that I was unfamiliar with. And the other part of all this too to go into is that I do think like picking up one of these is like the best way to actually play these games. I think controllers are a bit too sensitive for the way that you want to play. Here it felt like everything was kind of like designed because like even like look like when I push this back like the way the springs kind of like come back into place has a nicer feeling for the actual sensitivity, and it feels a lot more natural when controlling the plane. One of the things I will say, if you're getting into the hobby and if you're gonna go into this long term, is like definitely pick up one of these. Try to spend like more towards 100 than less so because it's like it is a better experience. But I wish that I bought the mounts for it so I can actually nail these things down because I still think that like while I was playing, you could see like them like kind of doing that
Oh,
like
so
when I
it didn't come
twisted
with a
it.
clamp or anything?
No, you have to buy that
Hmm.
separately, and I'm just
Okay.
saying like I'd recommend it just because it's like that way you won't like
Yeah.
slide off the desk. But again,
Yeah.
we are trying to play this on a budget, so like I like I was the one who did the test to see like if it was worth it to go out and invest and buy these things, and I think it does. I think it adds a lot to the experience. It adds a lot of like connection to your character in game because like you're
Agreed.
essentially playing with the same stick and like the actual sensitivities are correct.
Mhm.
Um and I think that's where like there was some disconnect for the gameplay for you guys, which I kind of completely understand. Like it just seems very it just seems like it's weird. I feel like this is like one of those games where you kind of want to shell out the money for, but you know, if you want to like just play it, like you don't have to. But I just recommend it. That's where I'm kind of out with it.
Yeah. I will say, so I think I do agree with like Nick's kind of assessment that the lower levels of difficulty were made to get you familiar with not just the game, but I think the genre, which is where it does come in that I think that this is a really good entry point. Is if you just want to figure out how to move the plane through space, it feels really good for that. Like,
Yeah.
at first,
Agreed.
it felt like yeah, like, at first it felt like shit. But that was the
Yeah.
learning curve, and then it felt good, and I was genuinely like, the most fun I was having was when I was and it's something I enjoy playing in games too, is just going into a steep dive and pulling up just in
Yeah.
time.
Oh my god.
Yeah. Yeah.
That feels so good. Or I kind of made it a bit of a personal challenge too. Whenever there's like a guided missile coming at you, you can drop a flare that will kind of redirect. I made it like a personal mission to never do that
Oh
and
my
just
god.
yeah, that's what I was
God
doing to
No,
make it
damn.
on
harder for
dude, trust
myself.
me. On harder difficulties, there's no fucking way. Like
Oh, it
I
didn't
was like
always work.
praying to God, dude. I was praying to God and slapping that fucking button. It was bad.
I would see. Here's the thing: I would wait for it to get so close and then
Yeah.
barrel roll, and it
Oh,
felt
cool.
Mm.
Yeah.
yeah. That's what I was doing, and
Yeah.
it like literally until it's like you can almost see it on your screen, and then you go. That was fun. That felt good. Like that was a really kind of fun personal challenges, and again, the way that you move through space feels really really good. On a mouse, at least the experience I was having, um, the mouse kind of just moves you, so it
Yeah.
was easy. But if you're playing with timing with stuff, that's just reaction time. Um, but now I want to talk about the trouble that I had. The voice is back. The difficulty that I had with one particular level that Nick's
Did we
talking
have the
about.
same one?
Is it 6?
Six,
Um,
probably. Yeah, that was like
I
I think around there was like
feel
the
like I
earliest.
had trouble with 6 as well.
6 sucked. 6. So pretty much again, like we're saying, there were 21 missions. The first 5 are kind of nothing. Like, they are baby level, learn the game. 6 wasn't even, for me, difficult in the dogfighting aspect or like the ground stuff coming up at you. It took me, I think, about 4 several hour play sessions to beat this one level, because there's a point at which you have to take out, I don't even, and again, because the lore doesn't connect necessarily to the gameplay, I wasn't even sure what they were. You're at like an extraction site for this fictional element that
Oh,
essentially
I
these
know it
wars are
is.
being fought over. Yeah. And
Yeah.
there are these like carriers, kind of, they're bunkers,
Mm-hmm.
where there is a piece of machinery in them that you have to bomb,
Mm-hmm.
and hitting the outside of the bunker does
Nothing.
Nick, I think you might
Yeah.
know what it is.
All it is that the world itself is based on like geothermal energy, so all of them are like energy plants. That's it.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, like the reactors or whatever they
yeah.
are. I guess they wouldn't be reactors if it's geothermal, but anyway, the plants in these bunkers, and there were like, it's a big, imagine, if you will, an apple turnover. And imagine, if you will, an
I
apple
love that.
turnover,
That's great.
where it's open on both sides, but with slits in the top.
It's so
Mm-hmm.
fucking annoying.
Very true.
I, you, it, it was so frustrating to beat, because the way
Yeah.
that I would keep losing this level isn't even because I would be getting shot down. It's because I would run out of ammunition. I would run out of things to throw at these these fuckers, because you have to like be so precise with how you're lining up your shots. Otherwise, it's going to hit the concrete, and it's not even like, oh, I've hit the enough, and
Mm-hmm.
then it's just gonna explode. No, I've dropped multiple bombs on these, and nothing has happened. And now I'm out of bullets. I'm out of
Yeah.
missiles. I'm out of bombs. I guess I'm done here. I guess I need to. I didn't die. I didn't get hurt, but I guess I need to try again, because dropping bombs on these bunkers does nothing. And it was the most frustrating part of the game. I came so close multiple times to just saying, fuck it, I'm out. Because it was a piece that felt unnecessarily difficult, in a way that, again, if we're playing so much with physics, at a point of dropping a plain load of bombs, you should have an effect. There should be something. There should be some guidance or some, nudge in a direction. And it was just, nope, do
Yeah.
better. And it
Try
sucked.
again.
Yeah.
Uh, just a quick note on that. I think that the whole problem, like Emily said, was like, since you have to drop from the top, well, like if you tried to drop from the top, it wasn't where it was, but your scanner was constantly like pointing in that direction.
Yeah.
So like initially, like when you were trying to bomb that location, you would think that it's like, oh, it's there on the top, but it isn't. It's
Yeah.
literally under a bunker, and then there's 2 sides of the tunnel that you're actually supposed to shoot stuff from. So if you think of like Star Wars, for example, where they do
Yeah.
If
the
you
trench
imagine
run,
an apple
yeah.
turnover.
If you imagine an apple turnover, you have to shoot the bomb through the slits, but I don't think
Yeah.
that the actual bomb itself actually goes as far as it wants you. So I think they actually want you to go straight through. But then, fun fact for you, this is okay. This is a complaint that I have, but it's also something that I kind of want, so I'm gonna talk about it. Uh, I wanted more levels with
Sorry,
more
real
like
quick, can I just
environment.
pop in
Yep,
real quick?
go ahead.
The
Yep.
only thing that I want to say about that, the last thing, is the way I beat it was strictly by accident. I was at a point of playing so much and being so fucking tired that I just kept going through runs, like take out everything in the air. Okay, then just keep throwing stuff at it. And I stopped trying to be precise, and then quite literally, monkeys with typewriters, I got through it. That shouldn't have happened. Anyway, that's just what I wanted to say.
From my perspective at that point, I definitely had the first few where, just as Nick was saying, like I tried throwing missiles and bombs, and it was doing nothing. So I was confused. And then I realized, as he said, that it's literally like Star Wars, where you have to shoot it through the tunnel. So basically, my strategy with that was that I would be braking as I was like getting close to the tunnel, and then as I got closer and closer, I was almost stalling. Um, and that way, it was just very easy to line up the shot instead of being at, you know, normal speed or fast speed and then like worrying about how to navigate out of that. So that was my strategy with it. If I hadn't really understood like how stalling was needed for like my strategy in terms of doing that, I probably would have been in the same situation of you, Emily, and just going around, 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 and then eventually running out of ammo. But that's what worked for me. Like, it did definitely take a few tries. Like, I remember being on that level quite a lot, but that's what ended up working for me. And then real quick, I'll say too on Nick's point earlier regarding like immersion with the stick. I definitely agree with that. In terms of like it can add a lot, especially to like a game where, we're saying it can be sort of tough to really like feel the lore with how things are just designed, and if you're on an easier difficulty because of checkpoints, things like that. I definitely think buying into the controller could be helpful in terms of adding to your, overall enjoyment. Obviously you need to weigh in terms of the finances. Maybe there's a situation where you could just rent it, or you have a friend who, is the one who suggested this to you and they already have it, just so you could try things out. I think those are good ways to get into it.
A good way to like get into, and something that I almost did if my finances were a little tight at the time. Facebook Marketplace is a great way to find used stuff. Go to your like local, not local game store in the sense of like card games and board games, but I mean like a local gaming store. They have just buckets of used tech, which is what I did. Unfortunately, my local gaming store, I guess, their big bucket of like used flight sticks were all for Nintendo, and I did not have the finagle that. But getting getting stuff used is a pretty good way to save some money while still kind of having that more luxury or more immersive experience.
Just getting back real quick to the other thing was, I know that you probably finished talking about the missile run, but what I was gonna say was it was one of the few times that I was actually pretty happy because it added environmental challenges to it, where essentially if you got too close to the lava, you actually started taking ping damage, which I thought was
Hmm.
really cool. Except for during that mission because you get shot at a lot by missiles, and then when you go in there, because your missiles don't actually reach it. If you try to go in there and trench run it, where like you run your ship straight through, if your ship doesn't have enough HP, it's not sustainable and it will literally die on like trying to get there.
Hell yeah.
That was a thing that I wanted to kind of mention. But talking about the game a little bit more, I do wish that there was more variety within the missions. I think the environments are actually pretty diverse
Yeah.
overall,
Agreed.
but like I think that the actual missions weren't there was a lot of just like again like go to place, point and shoot with just like different locations on where the actual things were. And like it's just like the different types of like like beach, like grass field, mountainous region, that type of stuff, like very very normal for like that type of gameplay. But I kind of wish that they use the environment a bit more to kind of like stimulate the growth. I think that my favorite level, which also probably gave me the most problem, I think it was titled Eminent Domain. I'm gonna look this up on my phone
Hmm.
because
That's
I
number
actually
7. I
wrote it
actually
down.
have the list. I had the
Oh,
list
that's
up to
so
remind
sick.
myself. Yeah, Eminent Domain is
Uh
number 7.
that's the cloud one, correct? Yeah. So
Yeah.
I think that that level was particularly interesting because it had a very unique elemental challenge where like if you were at like sea like closer towards the actual water, there were clouds on top which shot off like lightning bolts that I think could hit your plane. And then on top of that too, there were rail guns firing at you. So you had to be kind of very careful because you could be in the line of fire very easily. But what you can do is you could take cover in the clouds to kind of avoid that, or you could head towards the top layer and drop bombs that way too with your radar set. So you get this like really interesting kind of like 3 layer level where like the first is just like ground level where you have to deal with a lot of like boats and things shooting at you. The second is the clouds where enemy fighter planes can kind of get lost in there and it's hard to like find focus and like shoot your opponent, but at the same time like it's giving you protection as well because they can't really track or hit you too. And then you have the top level, which is just like all clouds and scenery where it is just the straight raw dogfight. And I think like levels like that where even though I had like a tricky time with it, I thought that was like one of the most fun levels because there was such a unique like level layout that like it was very fun for me and there were a lot of different challenges. The only other time though that I can really think of that is like with the volcano where like if you get a little too close to it like you can also start taking damage. But I kind of wish there was like more stuff like that with like the environment and weather. Maybe like a tornado or something. Like toss one of those in there. Sharknado, just add a bunch of sharks in there for whatever reason. I know that's more of a joke, but I think that the game could definitely use a little bit more variety in that sense where like again most of the time you're just trying to like shoot things down. But some of the other options like I would give is that going back to like the Star Fox thing, if we I don't know if we talked about Star Fox yet, but like I think that funny enough, like grandpa of all these shooter games, if you played like Star Fox 64, this game is basically just the all range mode the entire game, which is just that. But during like those levels, a lot of the times like when you went into all range mode in Star Fox, one of the neat things is that you would have like timed goals. So, for example, I think there was I forget which level it was, but in one of the levels you had to like defeat Starwolf in like in time in order to get like a certain branch on the path. Like there's like good and bad like branches. But I think that might have been like an interesting concept. Maybe like adding like a timed element to certain missions where like it's really crucial that you like stop this thing before like it impacts. Um and I think that could go a long way for like diversifying gameplay to a certain extent because if every mission is just kind of the same, it will lead to stagnation and people feeling like your game is a little bit boring. But I will say I think on the other hand, the set pieces and some of the twists of the levels make up for it. Like especially the first Crimson one like nuclear
Mhm.
bomb thing when you get to that point in the level after like it's kind of like a cool level because you have the advantage the entire time and like things are going very well up until that point where you get to the nuclear bombs and then that's when like it all goes to shit and then the next level is just dealing with those like fighter planes that are coming after you, which I think is really neat. But I kind of wish there was more stuff like that, like more diversifying within the types of combat that you are getting yourself into that I didn't really see in this game.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Yeah, the missions did kind of feel like they fit into like I would say maybe 3 different categories, which over 21 missions, you know, not great diversification. Could be worse, could be better. But I do want to second the idea that I think the environmental elements could have been a lot stronger. Like we said before, the world building in the lore is really strong. Like we are 150 years after a nuclear winter that was caused by, I believe, the like Yellowstone caldera exploding. Um, and as a result, like nuclear winter, we're just emerging from our like enclaves. Um, I didn't feel that. That could have been something super super cool.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like there were like more environmental things that you could have played with. And I say environmental in the sense of like natural, right? There were more ways we could have played with that in some way, shape, or form. I feel like there was something we could have done with that. We're in this kind of cool, technically post-apocalyptic, and frankly, potentially like even dystopian world where like at the end, Cascadia becomes like a mercenary like safe haven. Like there's a lot of really interesting implications that they're dropping that just don't have an effect on the gameplay at all. And I feel like, and this is a very small thing, but I do think it's a good example of what I'm like what I mean is after some missions, I think it starts. I want to say mission 4 is the first time you get the option to land your plane. Why? It was fun. I had fun doing it. I was like, "Oh, oh, not pull up just a little bit, just a touch, and we're down." But like that was a fun bit of immersion. Do more. Give me more. Give me more with that.
Mhm.
Um, you know, there were definitely like there were moments where have been like subverted an expectation, played with an environment, interacted with the lore, done something that just felt good, and they always like shied away from that in favor of having again this very maybe not the most realistic but like this very kind of by the book like plane control simulator. You could have told me that this was just a modern day military flight simulator and I would have been like, okay, I don't know enough about planes. All of my military knowledge comes from pre-colonization of North America, you know? So I don't know any of this shit from anything else. Like when we're in the mission, when we're in the plane control, the like mission, not mission select, you know what I'm saying? When you pick your plane and when you pick
Mhm.
what goes in it, I didn't know what any of that meant.
Yeah.
Like there was no blurb or description about the planes. It's
Yeah.
just a name that
That's
is
yeah.
yeah, like a name that is
Yeah.
very much a mechanical designation, like numbers and letters, some pips that show you, you know, handling speed, that kind of stuff. That was helpful. Nothing else. And the same thing when you're picking your different missiles and bombs. This one is for ground, this one is for air. Okay, but there's like 4 for ground and 4 for air, and there's an abbreviation when I pick each of them, and I don't know what that designation is. I guess I just have to play with it and see what it does. But especially with missions like number 6, when there's really a level of precision needed, I had to ask them, I'm like, what loadout are you guys using? Because frankly, nothing has a description. I'm throwing shit at the wall to see what's working, and at that point, nothing was. So you've got this cool lore that is just so detached from the game in so many ways, in a way that in cases like this, when I want to know, all right, give me more information about the planes, give me more information about the weapons, give me something more, it might help me. It's not there. The lore was not attached when you are picking the main way that you interact with the game, which is the plane.
So just I just want to talk about a couple quick things. Number one, landing the plane I thought was really funny because there's one of the levels where you come back and like your base is completely totaled right before like you fight a bunch of like you fight a boss. But I thought we were supposed to land on the runway because anytime like you come back to base, they were like saying that like, oh, land on the runway to get your things.
Mhm.
And then I tried to do that and didn't realize that this was a section where it's supposed to be a pause. So I just kept crashing the plane thinking that I was fucking up or running my like plane. And I was
Yeah.
like, there's no fucking way that like I can't land this plane, and I just kept doing it, and it was just really stupid because I didn't realize that it was supposed to be a bigger overall boss battle. But in terms of like the actual like just real quick, the planes descriptions, I think they do a pretty good job of explaining like they give you blurbs about the missiles, but I do kind of wish there was some flavor. I mean they do a little bit. They if you like sit down and try to like read it, it kind of explains it. Again, like like in any game, like you kind of have to like see how it functions in the gameplay to kind of figure out like if it's the weapon that you actually need. And like more often than not, like when I was talking about the FDS 14, that plane pretty much had like everything that I wanted, so that's the one I ended up like sticking through for the majority of the gameplay. And like it did a pretty clear job of like telling me what missiles to put in it. But I do wish that there was some type of flavor text. Like these are like
Yeah.
iconic planes, and I think these are iconic planes for a reason. And I would have loved to know like lore wise, like why did we choose this plane? Like why specifically is this like a
Mm-hmm.
good plane to have in the world for Cascadia? Like what was the interesting point of bringing it? And I think that you could kind of develop a little bit more of the story there. And then on top of that too, like what was it? The the issue that I had, I'll get back to it. Like I'll let you guys talk about it. I'll think about it later. But there was a thing I wanted to mention about the weapons.
Yeah. So what I was just gonna say is, I am glad that there was kind of a checkpoint with the landing zones. Like, if you finish a level and then you fucked up there, like I wasn't having
That
to
was fine. Yeah.
yeah, like you didn't have to redo the entire level because I was ready to like I beat a level and then I fucked up the landing because I didn't understand it at first, and I was gonna be like pissed if I had to redo the whole thing. But then I just like went back there and I'm like, oh, all right, well, we have that at least, silver linings, I guess. And then I got the hang of it after a while, but it's just, I think going back to that point a little bit is like that's what creates the moments of frustration. It's like you're not really grasping something at first and then you're punished because you didn't grasp it. So that could be a bit frustrating. But in terms of the going back to the lore aspect, it almost feels like this could be like what they have with the lore could be better as a book, just because like how it's structured. Like there isn't a lot here that is like accentuated by the fact that it's a game beyond like the experience of actually flying. But as Emily and I have said, that doesn't really come across for our experiences. So yeah, I wonder kind of from a development perspective if that was like honed in on super hard at first and then afterwards like it was okay, how do we sort of like wrap gameplay around this? It's sort of like chicken or the egg. It's like which came first, or were they sort of going on at the same point? I'd be interested to look into that more.
The one thing I will say though is that I wish that the menu was organized a bit better, because I think it, like, going off what you're saying, I think it is kind of like hard to figure out like where things are and like how to set them up for your plane. And I was struggling between like two planes about like, oh, does this have this, like, once I figured out like the loadout I wanted, I kind of like got a little lost when I tried to use other planes and tried to find those same types of missiles or types. And it felt like like again, like some of the acronyms could get you like confused between. But
Hmm.
I don't know if I can necessarily blame the game developers for that. I feel like these are like things that exist in the world, and like they just like put it word for word. But maybe like put like, I think like one of the best examples is like when you have like the dropping missiles, one of them says triple volley, and that like
Yeah.
explained like which one it was compared to all of the other like missiles that were dropped. Things like that I think could like help a little bit more in terms of like finding out like your best weapon type and weapon loadout. But that's kind of like my additional piece to all that.
Yeah, I should say some of the weapon names were like very like they said what they did, and that was great.
Similar, yeah.
Um, so that was helpful. Um, but I do think that like so my background with technology in the really broad sense is with computers, like computing technology, and when it comes to vehicles, all I have is cars. I was a motorhead growing up. I still follow. I love cars. got that on lock. I have no context for aviation really at all. Um, ooh, hmm.
No,
Okay,
You
we're
good?
good.
the
Like
Okay.
podcast killed Emily.
the podcast, I had
You have
like a
3
weird.
days to live. Your time
Oh
starts
no!
now.
I
Sincerely,
had
the
like a
Project Wingman devs.
Project Wingman is fucking
Project
like
Wingman
It's
killed my best
Crimson
friend.
Squadron.
That's what we got to put for the thumbnail. Project Wingman killed my Emily.
sniping me from beyond. I had like a weird muscle spasm like in my sinuses, and it felt bad.
Man.
Sniping, more like crashing the entire plane directly into your building. Yeah.
Uh-oh. Anyway. No, like, as someone who doesn't have any background in aviation at all, I could only go off of how the plane felt, but the planes could carry different things and, like, different volumes of things, so that didn't help, and at the end of the day, like, there was really only one plane I enjoyed flying, because the other ones all felt the same to me, frankly, more or less.
Yeah.
And one of them just felt a little bit better for again, I was doing a lot like kind of self-imposed nimble stuff. That was all I really had. And because I didn't have information from the game, like a blurb or something like that, and because I just don't have a background in flight sims, in military technology, in aviation at all I could go off of was how the handling was. And outside of that,
Mhm.
it didn't really mean much to me. I mean, even for the most part, like, some with the weapons, the names were a hint. With the planes, they were
Oh
not.
yeah, no shot.
Yeah, no.
Here's my
So I couldn't even.
CR-14. I don't know
Yeah.
anything else about it, but
Yeah, like I don't even remember the name of the plane that I was really particularly attached to. It was it was the one that had the camo exterior that had
Mm.
the anus at the back.
They all had that, Emily. Don't worry, I was checking.
Like that one, I was like, oh, this feels nice.
Excuse me.
Bro, wording.
I just, I did just make that connection after
Yeah.
the fact. Yeah. I'd say editor cut that, but that was probably
We'll be
gold.
right back.
So.
Yeah. The one thing I would
Pulled it
say
off
is
screen.
Yeah.
me and you focused on like completely separate things. I was so focused on the loadout, I was like, I don't give a fuck about these stats. My plane will fly no matter fucking what. And you were like, stats. The
Yeah.
charts tell me. They
Yeah, 'cause I
guide
had
my
nothing
wins.
else.
No, I know. I agree. I understand.
I was like,
I'm just
what does it
saying
all
like our approach.
mean?
I'm just
Yeah.
saying our approach was very
Yeah.
different in terms of like how we like chose and picked out planes.
Yeah. Well, Matt, what was your logic? If Nick was just, I will make it work, and I was like
Mine was
doing
like
calculations.
mine was like, does it have the bombs? And then it was like, it do though, and then I picked the plane.
Frankly,
And-
that like games radar, I think it was, article that I shared with you
Oh.
guys, like carried me
Yeah.
for a solid amount. And usually it just boiled down to you should use the M.29 for this level.
Yeah.
And that worked
M.29.
pretty okay.
Yeah.
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 And I do feel like the more I did that, the more it honestly, that's what I feel sort of taught me of like, oh, okay, so like for this level, I should probably do this. So like after I used that for a few levels and was able to progress with it, I do feel like I started understanding kind of like my own loadouts. So I would try to focus more on, I think, the loadout rather than the stats themselves. Because it really just depended on like, okay, is it more of an air-based mission? Is it more of a ground-based mission? And then that would dictate what my loadout would be. And then it's like, it kind of relates to the plane too, in the sense of like, I saw it more as like what each plane has the ability to equip and like how many slots it
Yeah.
has. Because sometimes ammo does matter. There were a few that it was like, especially the last one, like that
Yeah. I
is a
ran out.
meaty level. So you gotta like really watch your levels.
I will
But
say though, how do these planes carry all of these missiles? I think like a regular plane carries like 4 fucking missiles.
mm,
You have like 180 standard missiles
see,
in some of these
and
planes.
frankly, that is like a really easy thing where they could just really easily rationalize that, right? Because it is I mean, it's
It's in the
realism.
future.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like we're in our
Bro,
world, but it is a very different
my
world.
standard missile stays in my pocket at all times.
Yeah.
So
I
the way that in my head I kind of justified it is like I forget the name of the element that where like everyone's fighting over, the like
mm,
fake element. In my head I'm like this is like a like fantasy metal situation where the bombs are so fucking tiny and I'm
mm,
like, yeah, sure, I have 300 like rolls of 300 bullets alongside 39 guided missiles alongside just piles and piles of just drop bombs.
mhm.
I just imagine that there's like, okay, the technology has evolved to make all
Yeah.
of these like iPhones increasingly tiny.
Exactly. Like that's kind of what Mass Effect does with it. Like they just talk about like, oh, the weaponry has gotten so advanced with all these like, and then they get into the nuts and bolts of it of something that is like correct tone for their universe. But that's my point. Is like it really is so easy. Like you can justify it in lore,
Yeah.
with frankly like a couple lines. Like you don't need to go crazy with it, but
Dude, Link carries like 30 swords in his asshole, dude. Like
yeah.
that's just how it works, dude.
He's like a
That
plane.
yeah. A Link-shaped plane is all I needed to complete this game. And all he had to do was drop the Master Sword.
You heard it here first,
That's
folks.
so bad. Jesus Christ.
But yeah, I think overall it just sort of stems back to like there were opportunities here to create more narrative design, more lore that kind of fit in. It could really justify things with the gameplay, but I think it's just like they were more focused on building a very pretty world, which I think they were very successful with, and then having a functioning set of 21 levels that somewhat told, a story from like front to back. And that's just kind of how it was for 4 people.
Yeah.
I think that's like the thing. You got to sort of circle back to that at the end of the day.
Uh, and I think it's pretty impressive just the output they ended up like getting with the game. I think like if we're talking aesthetically, I think this game is like immaculate. I think a lot
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
the choices, the scenery, the audio, like I'll talk about the music in a second because I do want to get back into that. But in particular, I think that a couple levels definitely could be cut in this game. I think that there
Yeah.
are some levels that feel a little bit monotonous, and I think that they wanted to hit the 21 because like 20 is like the way that like I think most Ace Combat games are. I think that's the normal length of it, but it was like kind of writing an essay but just adding adjectives to every sentence to try to like
Hmm.
extend how long your essay is. And I think yeah,
Yeah.
English professor here.
Yeah.
And I think that like um maybe like if we redesigned and retooled some levels, they could be really great. But I think that some of them definitely had overstayed their welcome and their gameplay wasn't as interesting and diverse. But what I will say about everything is that the boss fights and when they showed up, those were like my favorite levels. Like when the gameplay itself was like fun, and then you had either like now I can't remember her name. We said it earlier. The
Frost.
Frost Druid or Crimson One kind of step into the pilot seat and like come in to fight. I thought it was always fun because those guys are fucking fashionably late every single time. The
Yeah.
war would have been over if they showed up on fucking time, baby. But because of it, I think that it adds a lot to the actual drama of the game, where like you spent like a long, difficult period trying to like wipe out these enemy units, and then right at the end of a level, this big threat will come at you with full force to try to put a stop to you. And like depending on like how well you've treated the plane throughout the level, it does become like a
Yeah.
real challenge. And talking about the composer, again, one fucking guy, like this is his, I think his first game ever. He hasn't really put out like I don't know if he's done a lot of other video game soundtracks. Just very brand new. I could be wrong about this stuff, but very brand new in general. And it was just very interesting because when I was playing those levels, the music was just so perfect for like every single dogfight. It made the characters stand out each and every time you fought them. And with like the music like climaxing at like certain parts of the fight, and like just like the spray of missiles, it's perfect. And I think that like especially the conclusion in this game, the conclusion with like that final fight with Crimson One is so spectacular, with like a lot of things. We'll talk about this fucking boss guy real quick. This guy not only has multiple spread missiles that shoot at you all at the same time. He has these force fields that turn into rail guns, and then you can't cross through them. And also, by the way, did you know that he can turn like on an instant? And so the tracking on your missiles just can't hit him. So you have to basically corner him, but his ship is faster than you. So it just leads to this like crazy back and forth fight where like a lot is being thrown at you, and it's a lot of like visual stimulation, but like I think that a lot of it is very clear, and like it's always very focused, and I always understand where my plane is within the space. And it led for a really challenging but interesting fight, and then that score added to kind of that beauty with this like really regal like rival fight towards the end, only to be kind of like left with a more somber note of like, you know, you, even though you won this war, you didn't really make this world a better place. You just killed another person. And like even though he was fucking crazy, he wanted something that was a little bit more noble than you. He wanted to have his country, even though he's fucking crazy. Like the idea that he kind of wanted to you know, keep like the Federation in power, have his own country, and with the like the way that like you are fighting, you know, you're a mercenary, you don't care about any of this stuff. Like this doesn't matter to you as long as you get paid, right? So there's like very interesting stakes and drama to the final fight, and I really appreciated it. And even ending on that more somber note, it was just really great. And seeing that beautiful fucking Matt here, editor Matt, I'm looking at you. Put in the clip of where like his ship explodes in the end, and it's a giant nuclear explosion, and then my ship is flying into the sunlight. I got that just for you, baby girl. Don't you worry.
Mm,
It's in the cut. Don't you worry.
very nice, very nice.
But yeah, that's how I kind of felt. I love those boss fights. They were the most fun gameplay for me. So much crazy shit.
Any additional thoughts? Otherwise, we can start wrapping things up and kind of close it out.
Yeah,
I
final
think
thoughts, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's a good time for final thoughts. I guess like my final thoughts were like, I think my this team did a really good job overall. I think this is one of the better games that I have played. Like a better like indie game that I've played in a very long time. I enjoyed my experience a lot. Again, I did end up spending a little too much money than I wanted to, but I do think it enhanced the experience. And overall, I had a lot of fun just like dodging and weaving and screaming about how my fucking plane crashed a million times. But over the course of it, I did end up really enjoying the game. And as I started to understand it, my enjoyment kind of multiplied a lot. But at the same time, I do think that like again, it's made by three guys, so there's development tweaks and things that they could do to make it better. But for what it is, this is like super impressive to me. I cannot like describe how happy I was to play this game.
Yeah, I agree. I think if you look at it in the context of the minimal amount of people involved, then like, yeah, it definitely is pretty nutty to think about it. But I would say for me personally, like it is hard for me to recommend this. I think there are some circumstances where it might work for you. I think if you have somebody that has already played a few of these and can sort of big bro guide you along,
Yeah,
maybe if there's someone you
I had
know
the
that
I got the big bro guide. That's what
exactly,
helped me out. Yeah,
exactly.
I agree with that.
I think it is just one of those kinds of games where it's much more beneficial and you're gonna have a better time with it if you have somebody that can sort of just give you some guidance along the way. And maybe they have, this controller that you can try out as well. But if you're really feeling yourself, if you played other flight sims like this, like I don't think this is gonna be any different for you in terms of enjoy. I mean, I think you're still gonna enjoy this as you would others. But yeah, I think the biggest thing is just understanding like your proficiency and experience with the genre, and then sort of going from there in terms of like what would make sense for you.
Yeah, I think I agree with both of them. For as many people, worked on the game, again, I didn't know that it was an indie production, let alone an indie production by such a small team. It was incredibly done. I think I spent a lot of this episode kind of talking about things I didn't like for the most part. Um, but with that being said, even though I myself didn't like the game, I think it is a really, really well made game. I think if you like flight sims, play this.
Hmm.
I think if you're looking to get into this kind of like this genre, like I said, I think this is a really good entry point. I did with that, when everything is said and done, I learned how to play the game, and the main element of gameplay, which was flying the damn thing, felt really, really good. So if that's what you're looking for, absolutely. Um, if you're like me, you're more interested in narrative, more interested in like storytelling aspects, including like mental storytelling. Eh, I can't really recommend it, to be honest. It hasn't compelled me to want to play more games like this. In fact, it's actually kind of done the opposite because for how well made this is, and if I didn't like this one, I'm probably not going to be super into other ones. That's my personal preference, but like I said, I think this is an excellently executed game.
Cool. So that is gonna be it for this episode of Save State Sessions. Until next time, that has been our show, and thanks again. Catch you later.